The first time I watched the security camera footage, I laughed. The second time, my hands started shaking. By the third replay, I realized my husband had been living a life I knew absolutely nothing about. And the worst part? The secret wasn't another woman. It was something much harder to forgive. My name is Emily Carter, and until 6 months ago, I believed I had the kind of marriage people secretly wished they had. My husband, Daniel, and I had been together for 16 years. We met in college over a spilled cup of coffee. He was awkward, funny, and so kind that he apologized for an accident that had actually been my fault. We built a quiet life together in a peaceful neighborhood outside Portland. We had no children, not because we didn't want them, but because life simply had other plans. Instead, we filled our home with traditions. Friday pizza nights. Sunday morning pancakes. Long walks with our golden retriever, Bailey. Simple things. The kind of moments that make you believe happiness doesn't have to be loud. Daniel worked as a regional operations manager for a logistics company. His hours had always been unpredictable, especially over the last year. Another late meeting? I'd ask. He'd kiss my forehead. I promise I'll make it up to you this weekend. And he usually did. Flowers. Breakfast in bed. Movie nights. He never gave me a reason to doubt him. At least, not until Bailey got sick. The veterinarian explained that Bailey would need medication several times a day while we were both at work. I'll install a security camera, Daniel suggested one evening. So we can check on him? Exactly. It sounded practical. The next afternoon, Daniel mounted a small camera in our living room facing Bailey's favorite bed by the fireplace. We both downloaded the app. Problem solved. Or so I thought. For the first week, everything looked perfectly normal. Bailey slept. He wandered into the kitchen. Sometimes Daniel checked the camera before I did. Looks like he's snoring again, he'd joke. Life continued. Then one rainy Tuesday, everything changed. I was having lunch in my office when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I smiled. Probably Bailey chasing a squirrel through the window. I opened the app. Bailey was asleep. But someone had just walked through the front door. Daniel. I frowned. Why was he home? It was only 12:18 p.m. His office was almost 40 minutes away. He hadn't mentioned leaving work. I watched him carefully. He didn't pet Bailey. Didn't take off his jacket. Didn't even look around the room. Instead, he walked straight down the hallway toward our guest bedroom. Then, he disappeared inside. The door quietly closed. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. 23 minutes later, Daniel came back out carrying a medium-sized black duffel bag I'd never seen before. He looked nervous. Not rushed. Nervous. He paused by the front window. Peeked through the blinds. Looked over his shoulder. Then walked out of the house. The notification ended. I stared at my phone until my lunch break was over. Maybe he'd forgotten something. Maybe the bag belonged to work. Maybe. That word became my best friend. That evening, I acted normal. So, I said while setting the table, busy day? You have no idea. He sighed dramatically. Meetings from morning until almost 5. I froze. Morning until 5? But I'd watched him come home. He smiled while pouring iced tea. My boss kept changing the schedule. I forced a smile. Lucky you. He laughed. You should have seen everyone's faces. I laughed too. Only mine was fake. Over the next 2 weeks, I couldn't stop checking the camera. Nothing happened. I started convincing myself I'd imagined everything. Then Friday arrived. Another motion alert. 12:06 p.m. Daniel again. Same routine. Straight to the guest bedroom. Door closed. 27 minutes later. The same black duffel bag. This time, he added something else. A thick manila envelope. He slipped it inside the bag before leaving. I zoomed in. The envelope had handwriting across the front. I couldn't read all of it. Only one word. Carter. Our last name. Why would our name be written on a sealed envelope hidden inside a bag? That night, Daniel told me he'd spent the afternoon meeting a new client across town. Another lie. I knew because I'd watched him. Every minute. The lies didn't stop. They multiplied. Business dinners. Emergency meetings. Weekend inventory checks. Each excuse matched another mysterious visit home. Always around lunchtime. Always the guest bedroom. Always the same bag. I wanted to confront him. I almost did dozens of times. But something stopped me. If he was lying this easily, what else didn't I know? One Saturday morning, Daniel left early for what he called a company conference. As soon as his truck disappeared around the corner, I walked straight to the guest bedroom. It looked perfectly ordinary. Fresh sheets. Bookshelf. Desk. Closet. Nothing unusual. I searched every drawer. Every shelf. Nothing. Then Bailey wandered into the room. He walked directly to the closet. Sat down. And stared at the floor. Dogs notice strange things. I knelt beside him. The carpet felt slightly uneven beneath my hand. My heart started pounding. Slowly. I pulled back the corner of the rug. There, hidden beneath it, was a small square cut into the hardwood floor. A hidden compartment. My fingers trembled as I reached for the tiny metal ring built into the wood. I lifted it only an inch. And immediately heard the sound of a truck pulling into our driveway. Daniel was home. Much earlier than he should have been. I barely had time to drop the panel back into place before I heard the front door unlock. Then his voice echoed through the house. Emily? I was still kneeling on the bedroom floor. And if he walked in, he would know I had found his secret. Emily? Daniel's voice came again, closer this time. I quickly pulled the rug back into place and stood so fast my knee hit the bed frame. Ouch, I muttered. His footsteps stopped outside the guest bedroom. You in there? I forced a laugh. Yeah. I was looking for the extra blankets. The weather report says it's supposed to get cold tonight. The door opened. Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I thought you were meeting Sarah for lunch. I canceled. He looked around the room for only a second. Then his eyes landed on Bailey. The dog was still sitting in front of the closet. Watching. Daniel walked over, scratched Bailey behind the ears, and gently nudged him away with his foot. Come on, buddy. It was such a small movement. But something about it felt rehearsed. Like he didn't want Bailey near that spot. You okay? Daniel asked. You seem nervous. Do I? You barely looked at me. I smiled again. I'm just tired. He studied my face for another moment before nodding. Well, I brought lunch. He held up a paper bag from my favorite sandwich shop. Normally, that little surprise would have melted my heart. Today, it only made me wonder whether guilt had inspired the gesture. That afternoon, while Daniel watched baseball in the living room, I couldn't focus on anything. The hidden compartment stayed in my mind. What was inside? Cash? Documents? Jewelry? Evidence? Every possibility felt worse than the last. That night, Daniel fell asleep almost instantly. I didn't. Around 2 a.m, I quietly slipped out of bed. The hallway was dark except for the moonlight spilling through the windows. Bailey followed me without making a sound. Inside the guest bedroom, I carefully rolled back the rug. This time I lifted the wooden panel completely. There wasn't much inside. Just 3 things. The black duffel bag, a locked metal box, and a thick stack of folders tied together with blue ribbon. I reached for the folders first. The top page read, Carter Family Trust. My heart skipped. We didn't have a family trust. At least, I didn't think we did. I untied the ribbon. Inside were legal documents, property records, bank statements, insurance papers. Most of them had my name. Some had Daniel's. Then I found something that made my stomach twist. A deed. For a small house 40 minutes outside the city. Owner, Emily Carter. Purchase date, 11 months ago. I had never seen that address before. I had never signed those papers. I kept flipping. Then another document. Medical power of attorney. Again. My name. My signature. Except, it wasn't my signature. Someone had copied it almost perfectly. Almost. I stared at it for several seconds. Daniel had forged my name. But why? The next morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. Instead of driving to work, I took a personal day. Then I drove to the address listed on the deed. The house sat at the end of a quiet gravel road surrounded by pine trees. Small. White. Well cared for. A swing sat on the porch. Flowers bloomed beneath the windows. Someone lived here. I parked across the street. 10 minutes later, an elderly woman opened the front door. She looked to be in her late 70s. Silver hair. Blue sweater. Gentle smile. She slowly watered the flowers before sitting on the porch swing. I watched for another 15 minutes. Finally, I gathered enough courage to walk over. Excuse me. She looked up warmly. Can I help you? I'm sorry to bother you. I hesitated. I'm looking for the owner of this house. Her smile softened. That would be me. I frowned. I'm confused. She tilted her head. Are you? I pulled a copy of the deed from my purse. It says I own this house. The woman's smile disappeared. Her watering can slipped from her hands. It hit the porch with a loud clang. She whispered only one word. Emily. My heart pounded. You know my name? She looked as though she'd seen a ghost. I've waited years to meet you. What? Tears filled her eyes. Oh, Daniel. She slowly stood. He promised he'd tell you. My mouth went dry. Tell me what? Instead of answering, she invited me inside. The living room was filled with framed photographs. Old family pictures. Vacations. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. Then I noticed one frame sitting alone on the fireplace. A younger version of Daniel. Standing beside the elderly woman. His arm wrapped around her shoulders. They were laughing. I looked at her. Who are you? She took a shaky breath. My name is Margaret. Silence. Then she whispered. I'm Daniel's mother. I stared at her. No. She nodded slowly. Yes. I shook my head. That's impossible. My husband passed away 12 years ago. Daniel told me both of his parents died before we met. Another tear rolled down her cheek. He told you that because... She stopped. Because he never forgave me. For the next hour, Margaret told me a story I'd never heard. When Daniel was 17, his parents divorced after years of constant fighting. His father gained custody. Daniel blamed his mother for destroying the family. Then his father died unexpectedly from a heart attack only 3 years later. Daniel refused every phone call. Every birthday card. Every letter she mailed. For nearly 20 years. He never spoke to her. I deserved some of his anger, Margaret admitted quietly. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I never stopped loving my son. I sat there unable to process any of it. He found me last year. I looked up. He did? She smiled sadly. One rainy afternoon. He knocked on my door. I thought I was dreaming. What happened? He hugged me. Tears streamed down her face. And he cried harder than I've ever seen anyone cry. My chest tightened. If he forgave you, why hide you from me? Margaret looked toward the window. I asked him the same question. What did he say? She hesitated. Finally. He said. Emily can never know until I'm absolutely certain she'll survive what's coming. The room spun. Survive what? Margaret looked horrified. He never told you? Told me what? She reached for my hand. Her fingers trembled. Oh, sweetheart. You really don't know. I could barely breathe. Know what? Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. The color drained from her face. It's Daniel. She answered. I couldn't hear his words. Only hers. No. Silence. What do you mean she left work? Another pause. Then Margaret looked directly at me. Fear filled her eyes. She's here. I heard Daniel shouting through the phone. Even from several feet away. Margaret slowly lowered the phone. He knows you've discovered me. My heart pounded. What did he say? She whispered 4 words that made my blood run cold. Don't let her leave. Margaret lowered the phone with trembling hands. Neither of us spoke. The silence was broken only by the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped across the hardwood floor. Why would he tell you not to let me leave? Margaret looked as frightened as I felt. I don't know. I grabbed my purse. I have to talk to him. Before I reached the front door, another car pulled into the driveway. Daniel. He stepped out before the engine had even stopped. His tie was crooked. His hair was messy. He looked like a man who had been driving far too fast. The moment he saw me standing on the porch, he froze. Neither of us moved. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. Finally, I broke the silence. You lied to me. His shoulders dropped. I know. You told me your mother was dead. I know. You forged my signature. He closed his eyes. I know. You've been hiding this house. I know. My voice cracked. So stop saying you know and start telling me why. Daniel looked at his mother. Can we go inside? No. I folded my arms. We're doing this right here. He nodded slowly. Okay. He took a long breath before speaking. Everything started 14 months ago. I was having chest pain. I thought it was stress. My doctor ordered more tests. He swallowed hard. The scans found something else. I felt my heartbeat slow. What? A mass. Silence. I thought I had cancer. The words hit me like ice water. I spent 3 weeks waiting for more tests. I didn't tell you because. He looked at the ground. Because I was terrified. Tears filled my eyes despite everything. I was convinced I was dying. I didn't know how to tell you. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a folded medical report. I recognized the hospital logo. The date matched the first day I'd seen him come home during lunch. I wasn't coming home to hide another woman. I was hiding my fear. I unfolded the report. Benign tumor. No evidence of cancer. My knees weakened. You were, okay? Eventually. But those 3 weeks changed everything. Daniel looked toward his mother. I realized if something really happened to me, you'd be alone. You've always handled everything together, I whispered. I know. But I also knew something you didn't. My mother had been trying to reach me for years. I kept every letter. I never opened them. He looked ashamed. The day I thought I might die, I opened every single one. Margaret quietly wiped away tears. They weren't excuses. They weren't demands. They were just. He smiled sadly. A mother telling her son she loved him. I drove here that same day. And I finally forgave her. I looked between them. Then why keep her a secret? Because I wanted to give you both time. What? He nodded. My biggest fear wasn't dying anymore. It was leaving the two people I love most completely alone. I wanted you to know each other. I wanted Mom to have family again. I wanted you to have someone if. His voice broke. If the next scan hadn't been good. Margaret quietly reached for his hand. He squeezed it. Then looked back at me. The house. I bought it for Mom. But I put it in your name. I blinked. My name? So she'd always have a home. Even if something happened to me. I remembered the forged signature. My signature? He looked ashamed again. The closing date couldn't be delayed. I was waiting for your birthday. I planned to bring you here. I wanted us to surprise you together. You would have signed everything yourself. But I panicked. I made the worst decision of my life. I forged the paperwork. I've already spoken to an attorney. I was going to tell you everything and correct every document legally. I kept waiting for the perfect time. There wasn't one. I stared at him. You lied every single week. I know. You made me think our marriage was falling apart. I know. I thought you were having an affair. His face crumpled. I never imagined you'd think that. Then what was in the black duffel bag? He actually laughed through tears. Photo albums. What? And old letters. I've been helping Mom move. The bag was easier than carrying boxes through the front door. For the first time in weeks. I laughed too. It was small. Broken. But real. A week later, Daniel voluntarily met with the attorney. Every document bearing my forged signature was replaced with legal paperwork. This time, I signed every page myself. We also began marriage counseling. Not because we had stopped loving each other. But because love without honesty becomes fragile. Trust doesn't disappear in one dramatic moment. It disappears one small lie at a time. And rebuilding it takes patience. Over the next several months, Margaret became part of our lives. Friday pizza nights became Friday family nights. Sunday pancakes became Sunday breakfasts for 3. Bailey quickly decided Margaret's porch swing was his favorite place in the world. Watching the two of them together often made me smile. Daniel slowly became the son he'd always wanted to be. Margaret finally became the mother she'd never stopped hoping to be. And I learned something I never expected. Sometimes the biggest secret isn't proof that love has ended. Sometimes it's proof that fear has taken control. Fear makes good people make terrible decisions. But fear doesn't have to write the ending. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year later, I received another notification from our living room security camera. Motion detected. Out of habit, I opened the app. There was Daniel. Standing in the living room. Holding a tiny golden retriever puppy. Bailey, now older and slower, wagged his tail beside him. Daniel looked directly into the camera and grinned. I know you're watching. I laughed. He held up a handwritten sign. No more secrets. When I got home, the puppy ran straight into my arms. Daniel wrapped his arms around both of us. I'm done hiding things. Forever. I looked at him. I'll hold you to that. You should. Then he kissed my forehead, just like he had 16 years earlier. Only this time. There were no hidden rooms. No secret cameras. No mysterious bags. Just honesty. And a family that had finally found its way back to one another.